All right. Is the link posted in the Slack?
Yeah.
Okay.
But probably feel free to like sit around and make sure it's
Yeah. So why don't we move over? We get off.
Hey, are these spots open?
Yeah. Oh man. Okay, so we're live.
What's up? What are you guys working on?
Sorry. Yep. Other than the fact that it's backwards here, it's a pretty good live stream.
Good evening, everyone. I'm about to do a workshop on how you can use AWS to create the winning hack. So, first I'm going to get into a little bit about myself. My name is Roland Singh. I'm one of the co-founders of Skywatch, who's holding this esteemed hackathon. I'm a UW grad, for those of you guys here from UW, but 35 years ago. So I have 35 years of software development experience. I've worked for different companies like IBM, Sierra Systems. I worked for MBA for a while, which was pretty cool, and for another company called Critical Mass. I've been with Skywatch since we started in 2014. And I've also won this hackathon. I mean, that's how we started the company, if anybody knows our history. I met my partners at the 2014 Space Apps Challenge in Toronto, and we came up with a global winning solution for best use of data. From that, we formed the company. For those of you that know anything about FIRST Robotics, I'm also the lead mentor of our FIRST Robotics team, so if you want to talk about anything robotic related, you can talk to me as well. And most importantly for this workshop, I have over 3 years of experience now working on AWS. Now, does anybody here not know what AWS is? One person. Okay, two. AWS is short for Amazon Web Services. Okay, and it's a cloud-based computing platform provided by Amazon. Right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some basic ideas on how to use AWS to win the hackathon, because that's why we're here. You guys want to win, right? I mean, who wouldn't want a free trip to Montreal, all expenses paid, or who wouldn't want to go to Florida to see a launch, right? I mean, that's what we got to do when we won the Space Apps Challenge in 2014. And I tell you, it's pretty cool. You want to win this. So, but how are you going to do it? Well, two things that I'm going to talk about. I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about what are some of the strategies that you can do in the next 48 hours to try to win this hackathon. So some very generic stuff on how you should approach whatever challenge you're working on. And then I'm going to spend the bulk of the time going through Amazon Web Services and figure out and let you show you some basic ways that you can implement some things really quickly and very cheaply or at no cost at all that will help you win the hack. So, strategies to produce the winning hack. So, first of all, I'm going to put a plug in for my coworker, colleague Alex, who's doing a presentation tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock about strategies for winning the hackathon, and he is the global winner last year, and he came out of this hackathon in Waterloo, and since then he's joined our company, and he's a GIS developer, pretty smart guy. But he's gonna give you the more recent experience. I'm gonna give you the experience from 4 years ago. And the best thing I can recommend is that you keep it simple, okay? Don't try to boil the ocean, all right? Just look at the challenge and look at the simplest and easiest way to present a solution for that challenge. Now, note that I didn't say to solve it. Present a solution, because this is key, right? Really try to narrow the scope in what you're trying to do, okay? Do your research, okay? Figure out that if that what you want to do or how you can solve that problem will work, okay? One of the important things, especially when it comes to judging, is that they want to make sure that you know your stuff, right? Okay, so your app doesn't work 100%, or it doesn't look pretty, big deal. But did you understand the problem? Do you have a solution? Is your solution feasible? So do your research, okay? And as I say, the app doesn't have to be running and it doesn't have to be working perfectly. But one thing I would recommend is try to make it look good, right? You got to think about it. You've only got 3 minutes, and visual impressions are a big deal for judges, okay? So if it looks good, chances are it's going to get highly rated, okay? And then work on your presentation, right? The presentations, because we're doing 2 rounds this year, are going to start at 8 a.m. on Sunday morning, okay? Because there are going to be so many teams here that we can't do everybody all at once. So we're going to have 2 rounds of judging. So your presentation has to be done by 8 a.m. So believe me, if you aren't starting to work on your presentation by 6 p.m. tomorrow, you're in trouble, okay? Because you need time to work on it. You need time to refine it, to develop it, to practice it, so it comes in under 3 minutes, because you're going to get gonged, and you want to be able to get everything across, okay? You know, the people that can get their point across in that period of time are the ones that are going to do well. And it doesn't matter how good or bad their solution is. If you come up with a great solution, but you can't do the pitch in 3 minutes, you're going to be in trouble, okay? So that's the long and short of how to win a hackathon, at least from our experience. All right, so how do you use AWS to create the winning hack? Okay, you need to sign up for an AWS account if you don't already have one. Okay, and it's I think it's what's the website? Anyway, if you go to console.aws.com, you'll be able to get in, and if you don't have an account, it'll force you to create one. Now, unfortunately, even though you don't plan on spending any money, you still need a debit card or a credit card to be able to create the account. This is an unfortunate thing with AWS. There are websites online where you can kind of create a fake credit card number that will pass that check. So you can use tools like that. But unfortunately, that's kind of the one drawback here. And for this particular hackathon only, we were able to convince AWS. Skywatch is a big AWS customer, by the way, to give us a number of $20 vouchers. So you can see me, or you can see Maureen after this, and we'll give you the voucher code that you can apply to your account. And so then this way you won't spend any money, and those vouchers are good until the end of the year. However, stick to the free tier. Okay, there is a free tier when you sign in. A lot of the services have free tiers about them. Make use of those. Don't exceed them. And as I go through each of the services that I'm going to be presenting here, I will show you, or I will tell you what the free tier limits are. Okay, and they're pretty generous. you should be able to get through this hackathon even without the voucher code, come up with a pretty decent application and not spend a penny. Okay? And so if you go to this website here, right? This is the free tier website, and you can go here and you can go through and search for the different services, and you can figure out what the free tiers are. Okay, so I'm going to get you started here. Oops, on a few core services. Specifically, I'm going to cover S3, which stands for Simple Storage Service. All right, Lambda. Oops, sorry, I should stop hitting my keyboard here. And API Gateway, if you want to create an API, which would be really handy. DynamoDB, which is a NoSQL database. And then if you really want to go old school and you need a Linux server or a Windows server, you can create one of those, and it'll be for free too. And we'll go through that really quickly. All right. Okay, S3. Simple storage service. Basically, you can create folders and upload and download files to those folders, all in the cloud, so they don't take up room on your computer. So if your laptop is anything like mine and you've only got 8 gig left out of your 250 gig hard drive, it comes really handy. Okay? One of the cool things about S3 though, is that you can create a static website and host it without bringing up a server, without doing anything, right? Just basically load the HTML, and away it goes. And I'm going to show you real quickly how to do that. Now, the free tier, you can store up to 5 gigabytes. Now, I know with some of the satellite imagery that you might be working, some of these files might be pretty big, so be a little cognizant of that. And then you're also throttled on the number of times you can read that. You can read the data and write it. That's what the 2000 is. And then also 15 gigabytes of data transfer, and that's per month. And as I said, these. So I mean, if you want to try again next month, you could. So let's go over to the console here, right? When you sign in and you've done the login and your account's been activated, and you first sign in, this is what it looks like, the AWS Management Console. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to what I really like to do is I like to use the services pull down, right? And then look, all the services that are available on AWS, there's tons of them. There's more than you can ever know. There's services on here I've been working on for 3 years that I still don't know. Okay, but so it's a really, really powerful platform. So we want to go to S3. Click on S3, and you're going to get the S3 console. Right now, I've already got a bucket in here. So the way it works is that you create a bucket, and then inside the buckets you can create different folders and you can upload files. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a bucket. I'm going to call it. We're doing a live demo here, so if I screw this up, well, that's the way it goes. Then you have all kinds of features here that you really don't need to worry about too much. Setting permissions. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use this to create a static website, so I want public access, right? So you obviously want people to get on your website, so you need to give them public access. Right? Next, and then it's kind of the review, and then it goes and creates the bucket. Okay. Now, I want to create a website out of this, which is pretty cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the properties of this, and I'm going to go into static web hosting. Okay. So I just want to use this bucket to host a website, and notice how it creates the URL for me, right? Which is pretty nice. So so I have an index.html file, right? I know it had it kind of pre-filled, but it isn't. And you can do redirecting, or you can disable it. You can save that, all right? And then you can go back to the overview. And then what I want to do is I want to do forward. Sorry. And I want to upload. I've got a file, and then of course it's the wrong. There, AWS space MC, and then I've got my index.html. So open that, load it, right? Next. I made it public, so all that should be good. I want it standard. And then I want up. So this will refresh, and then there it is. So if I go back into the properties, go to that cool URL that they give you. Oops, that was the documentation. See, I told you, live demo. All right. This worked pretty well last night when I was rehearsing. Anyway, in the interest of time, I'll move on because I don't want to waste too much time here. Yeah, I got to keep going. Okay, that's S3. Trust me, it works. And if I get it working later, I'll show you. You can come by and I'll show you. Now, Lambda is pretty cool, right? Because normally, if you want to run a program, you need to run it on a computer, on a server. Well, no, you don't. Not for Lambda. This is what's called serverless. Have you ever heard of serverless programming? This is AWS's version of that. Now, free tier, you can make 1 million requests and 3.2 million seconds of runtime a month, so it's really generous, right? Okay, and you can create, there are many templates and then many supported languages, and you can see here. Now, me, I'm a Python guy, so I'm gonna go to Lambda, and we are going to create one we're gonna create a real quick Python application. Okay, so I don't have any functions, so I'm gonna create a function. Right, I'm gonna author it from scratch. This is basically the simple hello world, and we're gonna call this, we'll just call it my app for now. And then Python runtime, right? I'm going to choose an existing execution role. You can tell I've practiced, right? I've already created a role, although you can let the wizard create one for you if you want, and then just click create. Right? Now I have a function, right? Nothing's triggering it yet. So how do I test it? Well, basically what you do is if you click the test button, it'll ask you to create a test event. So I'll call that test event my app. You can just leave the defaults, that's fine. Right? And click test. And that worked. Hey, something works. See? And that's the hello world. Right? Pretty cool. And I did that like in about 30 seconds. So, I mean, like, this is pretty simple. Okay, so that's Lambda. Okay, API gateway. Now let's say that you're creating a web app that's going to present some data, right? Now, if you're good with front end stuff and you know JavaScript, you can use JavaScript to call a REST API to retrieve data that you can present on the web page. And I'm not going to go through all of that because it'll take too long. But and also, I'm not a great JavaScript coder. But API Gateway will allow you to create that REST API like in minutes. It's really simple to do. Again, the free tier, 1 million API calls a month. I mean, like, again, really generous. I mean, like, you shouldn't have to spend a dime putting something together for this hackathon. So let's go back out here. Let's go back to my favorite services here. And API Gateway should be on this list somewhere. There it is. All right. So I'm getting started here, right? Because I'm creating an API. So yeah. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new API. Yeah. You already typed that in. The endpoint type is regional, that's fine. Create API. Okay. So then the next thing you need to do is you need to add a resource. Okay? Because there are none. So go to actions, create a resource. Like this is part of the path of the API. If you know anything about a REST API call, let's call it space apps. All right. Don't need to enable cores. Just I hope not. You create the resource, right? And then from the resource, now that that's selected, you need to create a method, right? And if you know anything about REST APIs, there's only so many verbs that you can use. We're going to keep this real simple and do a get. Okay. So the integration type is going to be to a Lambda function. Guess what? Because I created a Lambda function earlier, right? So we're going to use that Lambda function. Yes, I want proxy integration. And if I start typing stuff in, I called it my app, right? Yeah. And we'll save that. Yeah, and then it'll automatically generate the permissions for you. So I'm not going to get that stupid 403 error like I did before. And there we go. And I have an API, right? And so I can test this, right? I don't need any query strings. I don't need any headers. I don't need a request body because it's a test. And there you go. See, I just now created an API that called my Lambda function and returned that string. Pretty cool. Okay. Back to the presentation. DynamoDB. I think that's the next slide. Just want to make sure I got it. Yep, it is. Okay. So sometimes, putting stuff in raw files isn't good enough, and you need a database. Okay. DynamoDB is AWS's cloud optimized database. It's NoSQL, so if you guys know anything about databases, it's NoSQL. That means it's not relational. Okay, so that means you can the records are freeform. They're basically defined using JSON. Pretty simple stuff. Okay, and again, the free tier, you can store up to 25 gigabytes and 200 million requests a month. So again, really generous use here without using any. Okay, so. Let's go now back to the services menu, and let's go to Dynamo. There we go. Okay, so I want to create a table. And again, creating a table is pretty simple. Right? So you need a key, you need to define a key. Let's call it ID. It's a string. Don't need a sort key. And then just use default settings all over the place, right? Because the default settings it's all free tier. Okay. So I'm gonna give it a minute to create the table. Okay, items. So I have nothing in here, right? So what I can do is I can create an item, right? And so I can edit it here, right? So I have the ID. Let's call it number 1, and then I want to add another field. So you can append a string, call it my app, and then just a sec, I need 2 minutes. Good if I can spell it too, right? Okay, and then click save. There you go. I've got a database file here. The key is the ID, right? So now, how can I tie this all together, right? The easiest way to do this. First of all, I've got time. I got 5 minutes. Okay, in the interest of time, because I had this all tied together where I changed the Lambda function to actually read the Dynamo file and have it presented through the REST API. And trust me, it does work. But I've only got 5 minutes left, so there's a couple more slides that I want to get through, and I want to leave time for questions. So the last thing I'm going to show you is EC2. And as I said, if you want to instantiate a Linux server, if you're kind of old school and you need to run a server, well, you can do that, again, fairly easily, right? And you can create either Linux or Windows servers. You can pick the free tier eligible images, and I'll go through that real quick. The size of CPU, and you can have all kinds of different configurations here in terms of the amount of memory and the amount of disk that you can configure, and whether or not you're going to have 15 GPUs in it, like if you're going to use it as a gaming site or whatever. You can. All kinds of stuff. But for the free tier, it's a T2 micro, and you can configure up to 30 gigs of SSD. So back to my services menu. EC2. All right, I don't have any running instances. I click instances, and I launch an instance.
The only problem is it's backwards.
Right, so I'm going to use the Amazon Linux It's probably the easiest one. And then a T2 micro because I want it free tier eligible. I can configure instance details. None of this is really important if you just want to run server. Tags aren't important. Security group is not necessary. We're just going to leave it wide open, so anybody can access it. And you know, for the hackathon, that's perfectly fine. And then you launch it, right? Now, if you you need to use a key pair if you want to SSH into it, which is kind of useful, right? So I'm gonna have them create a new one because I don't have a I don't think I have one created. It doesn't matter. And then you can download it. So it downloads the PEM file, so you have it, so you can SSH into it. Okay. So now it's created. Okay. One more slide. Okay. Now for some of the challenges, you may need data. Obviously, and I mean, like, you know, there's a lot of information on the NASA site and on the CSA sites about how to access the data for the different challenges. But AWS has a whole trove of open data that you can use as well, that you can download and use. And what I want to point out, if you go to the Open Data website, you can see here what they have. I'm going to point you to Earth on AWS though. And we at Skywatch actually use some of the data out of these data sets too, right? And you can explore the geospatial data sets. So if you're looking for open source satellite imagery, Sentinel-2, based in Europe, 10-meter resolution. Landsat-8 is 15-meter resolution. And so if you're looking for pretty pictures of the Earth, these are good sites because they're free, right? Now, oh, excuse me, sorry. The only thing. I don't need to launch the Sentinel Explorer. The only thing that you got to be cognizant of when you're using these sites is that Landsat's free, but Sentinel-2 is request or pay. Okay. Now, what does request or pay mean? It means that if you're requesting the data to download, you're going to have to pay for it. There's no free tier on this. Okay. But as you can tell, it's a stupidly cheap price. And so if you use the voucher, you know what, and you download a couple of images and you have a couple of gigabytes, you know, I think everybody can afford 4 cents. But again, if you come to me afterwards or come to Marine and we'll give you the $20 voucher, it's not going to cost you anything. And it's a really, really good source of data. I mean, as I said, at Skywatch, this is our source for Sentinel-2 and Landsat data. We get it from here. Just a second. All right. Questions? I think I've got 2 minutes, sorry. Yes? Well, no, it creates, well, you know what, it may be in the metadata. You might be able to find that information. Because what you're doing is you're downloading entire, like for example, for Sentinel, you're downloading entire Sentinel-2 products. And they do have metadata files that are JSON based. So they're fairly easy to parse. You know, using JavaScript or Python, and that information may be in there. I'm not 100% sure. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Is the Amazon Open Data eligible under the NASA data requirement?
Is it? I don't know. Marine, would you know?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Are they allowed to use AWS open data for the NASA challenges, or does it have to be from the NASA open data set?
I think as long as you use some NASA data for the NASA challenges, and you explain how you use that data, you're allowed to have other data with it. But you have to use the NASA data at some point.
So that means you probably can't use Sentinel-2, but you can use Landsat-8.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, Landsat, it is sort of NASA. It's more the, what is it, NOAA or whatever, I believe, actually owns that satellite. But I mean, NASA basically runs the thing, right? I mean, they're the ones that make sure it doesn't fall out of the sky. So yeah, it might be a bit of a gray area. Yes, sir.
On that database site, that's really cool, you got a nice interface. Is there a widget though, where you can put a URL in for any of these other data sets that we're looking at? And like create a lot of data, and you can basically parse out what the tables and rows are and everything.
Are you talking about the open data site? Or are you talking about Dynamo?
All the ones that are listed.
The ones that are listed there. No, I don't know. I can't tell you. I'm sorry.
If we want to take data from some of these sites, you gotta process it and upload it.
Yeah, yeah,
Pretty cool.
yeah. I mean, as I said, the ones that are already on Amazon, you can access them directly because under the covers they're just in S3 buckets, right? So the same way that you would access data in your own S3 bucket, you would access it on those sites too. Right. Any other questions? All right, great. Thank you for your attention. Appreciate it.
Alright, do I just end the stream now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
And
You rock.